props today. Hello and welcome to KamenRider Blackman. And today, as long awaited, we'll be getting to review Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger, or as I personally like to call it, Zyuohger 2.0. For reasons, if you have seen this show, and if you haven't seen this show, possibly stop watching this video and go watch that. You can go watch Zenkaiger, because this show has quite a lot to talk about. But yeah, Zenkaiger. This show celebrates Super Sentai's 45th anniversary. And in terms of anniversary seasons, this is coming off of Zyuohger, the 40th anniversary, which left a lot to be desired. Like, story and everything else behind it's not awful, but in terms of executions, it definitely was not what we were expecting. Once again, especially for an anniversary season, which did very little outside of, well, the team up with Delinger and so on. But with this show, it's like they completely made up for it. They completely made up for it, and so much more. But enough talking about it. Well, enough talking about it. Let's start talking about it. Starting with the opening, which is sung by Ultraman Dyna's actor. So that was very interesting. Even back to last year when I heard that he was going to be the one singing it, I didn't know he was a singer. But yeah, this show, the opening, for the most part, I don't mind it. And I actually think this song breaks the trend of Sentai openings starting to sound like anime openings. Or maybe it was a short trend because it breaks that trend because Ryu Soldier a little bit, Kira Major definitely. But this opening, really upbeat, really positive, gives some small descriptions about the show, and it does its job, which is honestly I would say is a big theme about this show, positivity. But yeah, let's begin. Episode 1, Machine World is monstrously mysterious, or should I call it Kai 1, since the episodes aren't called episodes, they're instead called Kai number. So in this case, Kai number 1, Machine World is monstrously mysterious. Our story begins with images of previous Sentai becoming entrapped inside of cog-shaped gears, thanks to our villains, the Toji Tendo Dynasty. They are from another world called Kikaitopia, and have captured every parallel universe, including the worlds of the last 44 Super Sentai. Now, this puts out the question of continuity in Sentai because, as we all know, from both Zyuohger and Kyuranger, they both take place in their own separate universes. But one of the underlying themes one of the underlying motifs of the show are parallel universes. And considering what will happen very much later, and even from the beginning, I would still want to believe that there is a main universe where each Sentai season happens right after the other, and Zenkaiger is another one where it takes place in its own separate universe. Considering the fact that in the Zenkaiger universe, we'll see there apparently before the Zenkaigers there was no Super Sentai, and they're made aware of it because of all the other worlds. So that's my only theory and possibility, I guess. But like what I said, Zenkaiger most likely is its own separate universe at best. that's the most of an assumption I can make, because even I think from before the beginning of this show going into like this new era, like I think one of the producers wanted to do something different with the next 5 shows, or so I believe. That's the best I can make up of, because still, to counter my argument about there being a main universe where each show takes place after the other, think back to that one episode of Cura Major where they were referencing Geki Ranger. They never said it happened elsewhere. It's like, no, that's a legit example of the main Sentai universe. That's the best example I can make, because I'm one to believe that continuity shouldn't be that hard to explain. Anywho, we next open up to the first of our protagonists, Kaito, preparing to bungee jump off a skyscraper. I've checked, and bungee jumping off of private property is worth 6 months in prison. Yeah, Kaito is very... I'm not even going to say innocent, just wacky about wanting to be the first for whatever. And best believe the first time around when I tried to watch this show, I kept saying to myself, bitch please, you're not 01. Just for whatever reason. Anywho, and as he's getting kicked out of the building, Kikaitopia, the world of the Kikanoids, merges with the human world. Now say this first episode, while silly, sets up a lot for now and later. For example, as we meet Kaito, we learn that he lives with his grandmother, Yak-chan, because his parents are missing. And just talking about the actors now, his parents are previous Toei actors. His dad, Professor Isao, is the AR World Kabuto, and his mom is Chiyoko, like the restaurant owner from O's. So that's really nice to see her again. But her character's name is Michiko, I believe. But moving on, they both play Kaito's parents, and they're scientists that were studying parallel universes and went missing trying to find if any exists. Now, back to the episode. We see small cameos of who will be our future Rangers, but episode 1 is about Kaito and Judan, our Red Ranger. And once the Toji Tendo attacks, I like how very clear they make things. They don't care if you're a human or their own kind. If you're in the way, move. Because they're world conquerors. They're here to take over. And Kaito just so happens to have the necessary tools to fight them once he incidentally turns on Sekchan, the little birdie who's basically Navi 2.0. And Sekchan is adorable. He is so adorable because once he turns on, Sekchan leads Kaito and his grandmother to his parents' lab, where they created the morphers and whatnot to combat the Toji Tendo. And I'm not going to talk about the suits just yet. I'm going to wait until we get to all 5 Zenkaigers first. But for the rest of the episode, Kaito and Judan become the Zenkaigers, and the end of this episode leads into the next episode. And so, with that said, with episodes 2 through 4, in proper order, we meet Gaon, Majine, and Vroon. Vroon and Majine are 2 special cases. Vroon because he used to be a part of the Toji Tendo as a janitor, but he likes to learn things, and what led him to defecting was that he accidentally learns some information that he shouldn't have, and is ordered to be killed by Ijidude. He's a general that I'll talk about in a bit later. And weirdly enough, in their ranger forms, Majine is the only one who gets special powers. Because, like, Majine is all into fortune telling and all. And that's apparently why she gets special powers in Suit. Though, in her debut episode, I have a small issue about when she starts using her powers. And it's because they're fighting a monster that freezes things. And she uses magic for everything except to create fire to melt ice. Like, that's my one thing. And since this is an anniversary season, it's very clear that the Kikinoid characters are based off of past Sentai, which now we can start to talk about their suits. Off the bat, out of all the Kikinoid Rangers suits, I like Vroon's. Like, I like how streamlined it is. And aside from Vroon's, I also like Zenkaiger's outfit. Because, if you can tell, each Ranger is based off of a previous Sentai mech, except for Zenkaiger, who is a fusion of, I want to say, Aka Ranger and Big One. Everyone else, on the other hand, Judan is based off of Daizujin, the main mech from Zyuranger. Gaon is based off of Gao King from Gao Ranger. Majine is based off of Magi King from Magi Ranger. And Vroon is based off of Daiboken from Bokenger. So that's why I really like how streamlined it is. In the suits, while they are homages to previous seasons, they do manage to stand out quite well on their own. To which, while we're still talking about the suits, since now we have all 5, it's really clear from the jump that Judan, who is red, is not the team leader. Instead, that's Kaito, and he's white. It's been a very, very, very long time since we had someone who wasn't the Red Ranger be the leader for the team. A very long time. Honest to God, the closest example I can think of is like Mega Ranger, where Mega Black was actually the leader of the team. But I wouldn't go off of my word alone, because there have probably been other seasons since Mega Ranger where someone who wasn't red was the leader of the team. And if anyone can think of examples, feel free to drop them in the comments down below. Lastly, while we're still on the suits, I actually want to talk about the weapons they get while in suit, because, let me think, Judan just gets a sword and shield. The one weapon I'm a little iffy on is Majine's. Like, she gets a scepter because she's a magic user, but that scepter she gets is just so bulky. Like, I understand, like, for once she becomes a dragon, that becomes her tail, but it's just so huge and strange to wield, especially out in combat. But, oh, that's just me. Lastly, we're actually just going off now now we're just basically talking about the aesthetics, to which their morpher, the Delinger. This is my friend Thomas's, to which expect to see a cameo from him at some point in this video. But yeah, the Delinger, I quite like the design. I like how, one, it's another gun morpher, but I think what I like so much about the gun morphers from like Kyoryuger and even Lupin Ranger versus Pancho Ranger, they all manage to be different some type of way. Like with Kyoryuger, the gun was a revolver. In Lupat, the gun was a straight, well, it was a regular kind of gun, but depending on the team, it was like their collectibles were faced up some type of way. With this, it's a Gatling gun, and it does its job. I even like the writing on here for Delinger. Moving on. And that's not all I have. Also, the gimmick for the season, the Sentai gears. They're cog-shaped medals, I almost said medallions, that give a user an example use of a Sentai team's powers. Because, for example, from the first episode, Kaito uses the Zyuohger gear, and he gets Zuo Eagle's wings. And in the next episode, Kaito and Judan use the Gogol 5 gear, and they get ribbons. It's an absolutely silly example, but Gogol 5 was gymnastics themed, and that was the reason why. Oh my god. And we'll get to the counter to these in a bit, which are called the Choju gears. But for now, let's talk about the Zords. Like, Kaito himself, he doesn't have a Zord, but the other four can transform into their own mechs. It's also been a very long time since the Rangers can become their own Zords. And it's really rare too, now that you think about it, because in Magi Ranger, it was magic, and in here, they're machines. Like, they're sentient, their own personality machines. But apparently, since they found these in Kaito's parents' lab, I give it a pass since these were planned out and designed ahead in advance. So they wouldn't have to meet Judan and the others to tweak them some type of way. But individually speaking, the mechs, I'm not a big fan of the T-Rex form that Judan gets. If only because it's so bizarre, kind of, to me. Like, the last T-Rex mech we got was from freaking Ryu Soldier, and that looked great. But here it's just, it comes across an issue that I had before in Loopat, where mech designs are starting to become a little too simplistic. Because then you get to the Megazord, and it's a lot more too simplistic. Speaking of which, of the Megazord, or should I say Megazord, since there are 4 of them, and 2 each can make a Megazord, Zenkaiger. The first one with Judan and Gaon, not particularly my favorite. The one with Vrun and Majine, which brings me to another thing too. The mechs in this show are pretty hit or miss in some cases. Like, some are more misses than hits. And there aren't a lot that I do like, particularly from this show. I'm still looking at, like, Vrun and Majine, and I'm trying to like it some, but I'm not all there with it. And so, Like, the fact that it can fly, yeah. Well, maybe for both of them, they don't do it for me, unfortunately. So, lastly, let's elaborate on our villains. The Toji Tendo Dynasty. So there is the big boss in charge, Bokuas the Great, who met Frank Murphy once and got put through a fucking wall. I'm kidding. But if you get that joke, 1, good for you. And if you didn't get that joke, go watch F is for Family. It's on Netflix and it's hilarious. And yeah, he's a head and an arm in a wall. But hey, who knows? You know how many villains there are in Sentai that have just been sitting on their asses and have done nothing. Maybe as a reference to that. Hell. And he has a little bird, too, named Gigi. And honest to God, I want to give that bird a nickname and call him Georgie. Because, come on, it's a cute little bird. And his name is Geeky. It's like... Yeah, like, if that bird was sold as a toy, I'd name him Georgie. Because, come on, he looks like a Georgie. Anywho, along with Bokuas are his generals, Ijidude and Barashitara. And I'll say this, I like the general designs. I might like Ijidude's a lot more over Barashitara's, just because he's on wheels, and I think that's very cool. I love the color pattern too, and it's totally rare that we get a villain who's a general, but Ijidude looks like he would be the final boss, but he's not. He's a general, and he looks so sweet. And the fact that he's a scientist too, I know he's a machine, but you can also think that in a mad scientist way, he could have done that to himself, sort of. I don't know, but that's just me at least, in my mind. And in episode 4, what Verdum shouldn't have learned is that, for one, the monsters of the week are themed after worlds the Toji Tendo have captured into their own versions of gears called Tojiru gears. And once a monster is defeated, the world-based gear the monster was using will be broken, thus the world will be free. And so, next, in episode 6, we are introduced to Stacy, Barashitara's son. And I didn't watch this show in its entirety when it was out, but I did catch on some episodes and previews to know that this kid's mom is human looking. So how he was conceived, one could only imagine. And legit, right now, in my head, right now, either robots apparently have genitals, or it was a Damian Wayne situation. But here's another thing to know. Either way, in this show, robots can eat and pretty much age.